Hello, and welcome to my why. Um, so, Fit Admin Life is something that I wanted to start several years ago. And at that time in my life, I was probably in my fourth or fifth year of principalship. Um, and I had found myself in this space where I wasn't exercising like I needed to. And I was just looking for a way to stay motivated. So I thought about um, God just kind of dropped in my spirit this idea of working with other leaders, not just educational leaders, but leaders, period, who were having a similar struggle. And my original concept was to do virtual challenges and opportunities for us to work out together, to post our workouts, to encourage each other on how we can eat healthy, how we can stay in the gym, or do whatever it is that we need to do to be our healthiest selves. Because for me, in that time, I had started to put back on weight. I wasn't hitting the gym. I was in a good groove in my leadership space, but I wouldn't say that I was in my healthiest space, right? Um, and so I shared this idea with the person who I was dating at the time. And what they said to me was, like, why do you want to do that? That's just another way for you to try to get attention. Why do you want to do that? That's not like no one's going to really want to watch that or be a part of that. And they had all these whys that were very negative and made it seem as if I was being narcissistic or self-serving. And that's not how I ever wanted to come across. So I squashed the idea. I wrote it down, put it in my phone, and then I just put it in my back pocket and I walked away from it. A couple years passed, me and that person no longer were together, and the idea comes back to me in the end of December of 2021, going into 2022. And God shared with me just a download, like God just downloaded all of these things that He wanted me to do as I went into 2022. And Fit Admin Life was one of them. But this time it was different. It was Fit Admin Life. What are all the ways as a leader that you need to live a fit and healthy, thriving life? Physical health is one of those. But for me, as with many other people, as with anyone, it's also emotional, mental, spiritual, relational. Um, what are those core things in your life that help you to be healthy, that help you to maintain a life of health and to be your best self? Like those moments where you feel the most free, the most centered, the most at peace. What's happening and what are you doing? And that's what Fit Admin Life is birthed from me wanting to be intentional with how I live my life, so that I'm able to continue to do this leadership work that I was called to, but also able to do it from a healthy space and not from a burned out, exhausted space in life. And how can I help other people to do the same thing and to know that they're not alone? Like, you are not alone when you are overwhelmed and in tears. You are not alone when you feel like you can't breathe. You are not alone when you are tired of being the person who has to have the answers and has to make the quick decisions and has to problem solve. You're not alone. And it's okay to be exhausted and to want to just be. It's okay to want to sit in a space and do nothing and be okay and at peace with doing nothing, because that is a part of your humanity and a part of who we are. And we're not meant to carry the burden alone. We're not meant to do this work alone. It takes a village and it takes a community and it takes doing it with intentionality. Leadership is hard, but it's a gift. And it's a gift when you do it well. It comes natural because um, one of my previous guests, Jonathan Hadnot, said, leaders are not made, they're born. And I believe that. I believe that. I believe all of us have a leader in us, whether we like it or not. But leaders are born and it's a part of who they are innately, who we are innately. And I say that because growing up, like my entire life, I've been put in leadership positions. And I thought recently, I was like, man, what is it that I was called to do? Like I am an educator. I am a principal. That's what my job title is, but it's not who I am, right? Like at my core, I'm not Sharmika the principal. I'm not like that's not the only title I will hold in my life. Um, I will always be a teacher, but leadership is a part of who I am. It is like I am a leader. And no matter what part of my life I've been in, God has always put me in positions of leadership, whether I felt like I was ready for it or not, whether I wanted it or not. He has always placed me in leadership positions. As early as my childhood, when I was growing up in church, I was the president of the choir, the youth choir. I was the president of the youth department. And I didn't know anything about being a leader, right? I'm like, okay, I'm president. I don't know what that entails. I'm just going to do what the adults tell me to do. Because I don't know I didn't know what I was doing. But God was teaching me in those early stages how to learn from my elders, how to ask for help, how to take guidance, how to give guidance, how to have an idea and be confident to run with it, the consequences of having an idea and not running with it. Um, God just taught me so many nuggets early in my life, um, from being a youth ambassador at the daycare center and helping to watch over the other children. I mean, you name it, God just put me in all these different positions, um, including at school on student council. I mean, you all kinds of stuff. But I share that to say, like, no matter what position and stage or phase of life I've been in, God has always placed me in roles of leadership. And not always in ways in which I thought I was cut out for. When I became a teacher and I was working in my very first teaching position in New Orleans, before I knew it, I'm over the entire student council organization. And next thing I know, we are heading to the state capitol, and we are a part of a huge program where we are teaching our Black students who all the aspects of government. And in that, they were learning, they were actually doing the roles, right? They had to research all the roles of government, and then they had to get up and actually enact them over the course of this weekend. So you had people who were the judges, you had people who were the Senate, who were the House, who were, you name it, like there was a person in each and every role, and they had to get up and go through the whole process and actually do what our governmental leaders do on a daily basis. And it was a beautiful experience. But I didn't know anything about that. I had no clue about that. But that role of leadership gave me that opportunity to bring my students into this space. And it was an awesome opportunity and experience for my students and for myself. And then when I became a teacher in Illinois, next thing I know, here I am. After my very first year at the middle school, God like lit a fire in me to become a leader for the language arts department. And it's so much that I didn't know, but I didn't get stuck on what I didn't know. I knew that I saw things that were really beautiful with our department, but I also saw some tremendous areas of growth that were needed and gaps that were keeping us from being our best. And I was like, okay, if I can do nothing else, I can work with my team on improving these areas, and that will make us better and that will benefit our students. And we did that. And by the time I left from that role over the course of 7 years, we had, 6 years, we had the highest scores in the building, in the district. Our curriculum was absolutely amazing, but it was what we had done as a team under my leadership. And then I went straight from there to being a principal. And nobody could have ever told me, no one could have ever told me I would go straight from the classroom to being a principal. Like, I didn't want to be a principal. I wanted to be a curriculum director, which is why I went into education. I wanted to make sure, but that's not why I went into education. But once I got in education, I realized that was what I wanted to do, because I got tired of seeing our most marginalized populations having really, really, really horrible curriculum and having teachers who didn't have what they need to teach our students who need it the most. It was just very backwards to me. And I was like, I'm going to change that. I am going to change that piece of education. I am, wherever I am, I want to make sure that our teachers always have exactly what they need to do their best teaching for our students who need it the most. That's why I became an educational leader. But unbeknownst to me, God would take me from the classroom. I would apply to become an assistant principal. And instead of getting assistant principal, I got a principalship in a smaller building. And it was a beautiful experience. I loved it. Like, I love principalship, but it is very difficult. It is very hard. It's very draining. It's very fulfilling. It's very enriching, but it's very difficult. And so here I am in year 7 of my principalship. And I have learned so much about leadership, and so much that I wish I had done differently earlier in, and so much that I wish I knew. And so instead of getting caught up on the wishing mill of life and regrets or whatever, because you don't know what you don't know, instead, I was like, how can I help other people who are coming up? How can I help other leaders who are in this work? How can I be of assistance in any way, even if it's just through connection? How can I connect with other people who are leading wherever they are? And we strengthen and empower each other in this work. I don't have all the answers. There's so much I don't know. So much I don't know. But I enjoy learning. That's a part of life. And so when I think about Fytadmynlyfe, I think about a community, a village of people joining together and encouraging each other, learning from one another, motivating each other, and just continuing to pour life and wealth and knowledge and power into one another. Because in the moments where we feel like we can't keep going, we have other people who often cheer us on or say just the right thing to give us that word of encouragement to keep going. In the very first podcast that we recorded, it was done with a wellness panel with Michael Allen, Coach Ambrose, and Coach Natoya Franklin. And we talked about work-life balance. And that podcast was about an hour and a half. I broke it up into a bunch of different segments because there was so much wisdom and knowledge chunked all throughout that thing. And at that particular moment, when that podcast was being recorded, I was at a place where I was truly functioning at about 25, maybe 30% is generous. I was functioning about 15 to 20% at that time of my career in just my days, because I was going through a lot at my job. I was in a new district, a lot of learning curves, encountering a lot of racism. And it was just a very toxic space going in. My leadership team, the people who, like the superintendent and his team, incredibly supportive. Members of my staff, certain members of my staff, very supportive. Certain parents, very supportive. Um, and the kids were amazing. Kids are always amazing. But it was huge and it was hard and it was very difficult and it was very draining and it was very hard, very hard, very hard. And I encountered things that I had never experienced. And what I didn't do was lean into my mentors. I didn't reach out to my mentors right away and say, this is what I'm going through. This is what I'm experiencing. How can you guide me? I reached out right when I started, but then I pulled back because the harder it got, the more embarrassed I got, the more I isolated because I didn't want people to know how much I was struggling. I was used to thriving as a leader. I was used to doing everything right and at least thinking I was doing everything right. Excuse me. But I didn't know what I didn't know until I was there and I was going through it. And that put me in a place where I learned a lot the hard way. And I had to go through some things that I probably could have avoided if I had leaned into my mentors. And not just that, but there are some things that were just inevitable. There were things I just had to go through last year. But my mentors, if I had leaned into them more, could have at least been there as an ear and a comfort to let me know that it's okay and how to navigate it. Because when I did reach out to them and I did share with them what I was going through, like the things they experienced in their careers, they were able to connect, they were able to give me advice, they were able to love me up and coach me up. And it was really powerful. So then when we recorded that podcast episode, it spoke so much to me that when I listened to it recently, I laughed, I cried, I felt all the emotions going through it all over again because I realized how important it is to remain healthy. And I remember Coach Ambrose saying, if you're doing something and you're miserable, then you probably need to think about what else you need to do. And last year was probably one of the times where I was like, what else am I good at in my life? Because this is not it. I'm not going to die doing this work. And that broke my heart because I know that education is what I am called to. I know that public education, more importantly, is what I'm called to. I don't know what it will always look like in my life. I don't know what role I will always play, but I know that it is something I'm called to. But with that, it made me think about how am I doing this work and how am I allowing myself to be my best in this work? And what are things that I need to change in how I'm leading? What are things that I need to change in how I'm showing up for myself and for my family, for my loved ones, so that I can really live and lead from my best self? Because when I'm on empty, I'm not giving my best. I always say that we cannot serve and we cannot serve from an empty cup. And when we have nothing left in our kettle, then we just have steam, and steam burns. Steam gives a really bad burn immediately. It's not like it gives a warning. No, steam burns immediately. And that's what we end up doing when we are not our best self. We burn other people. We hurt other people because hurt people, even when they don't want to or try to. It's just what happens. So how can I pause? How can I make sure that I'm being healthy? How can I make sure I'm being intentional about my health so that I can lead from a healthy space, so that I can live from a healthy space? Because if I'm not healthy, then I'm not living well. And that's important because every day that God wakes me up, He has a purpose for my life. Every day that God wakes me up, He's called me to do something and to pour into someone else and to be a key part of this society and this world and the people around me. And I can only do that well if I'm doing it intentionally and I'm doing it and being intentional with my health. And that's the purpose behind Fytadmynlyfe, right? How can we join together as a collective and be healthy together? After we recorded the podcast last year, what I didn't know is a week later, I'll go on spring break and get on a four-wheeler and crash and crush my wrist and tear a ligament in my hip and bruise the entire right side of my body, and be down for about 4 to 6 weeks. And that also began an even harder chapter in my work life because things revved up on that end too. It ended well by the end of the year, but it revved up pretty significantly throughout the school year or towards the end of the year. And so like that whole Fytadmynlyfe thing became crucial because now I was in a place where I had no choice but to center my physical health, which means I had to center my mental and emotional and physical and spiritual health, right? All of the pieces became very important immediately. And so here we are. Over Thanksgiving, we relaunched. Thanksgiving of 2022, November 2022, we relaunched Fytadmynlyfe. And we are currently on episode 7. This will be episode 8, actually. And I just want people to know that you are not alone in this work. You are not alone on your leadership journey. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to act like you have it all together because none of us do. Where you are great, be confident, and slay it, thrive. And where you are struggling, don't be afraid to ask for help and to learn. None of us know everything. Great leaders do not know everything. Great leaders know what they don't know, and they know what they do know. And where you are strong, you be strong. And where you have skills gaps, you learn it, or you find people who know it and who are masters in those spaces. And you build your team so that you have a team of people who know all the important pieces. And you allow them to become strong leaders so that they can teach other people what they know. And now you have a network that's not dependent on 1 or 2 or 3, but it is dependent on the collective. And where you have many hands, you have a light load. But when it's just you, you drown under the weight. This work will kill you if you allow it. When I say this work, I mean leadership, because you are in such a high stress space so often, making really crucial decisions that impact a lot of people's lives and livelihood. And when we are not careful, we can hurt people. But when we are intentional, we can heal and we can strengthen and we can grow future leaders and grow other leaders and grow ourselves. And so, as you think about how you can continue and grow your Fytadmynlyfe journey, I ask you to think about what makes you happy. What do you do that you find joy in? What is your why? How do you make sure that you're taking time to connect with your family and your friends and your loved ones? How are you taking time out to enjoy what you do? How are you building your leadership team? How are you structuring your day and your time and your evenings? What are your boundaries? Are you working from the time you get up to the time you go to bed? Or do you have some time built in for your physical health, for your spiritual health, for your emotional and mental health, for your relational health? Do you have time where you just cut off the work and do other parts of your life? What are other things that you enjoy outside of your job? What are the things that you are doing to lead? Because your leadership is not just for the place that you work. Your leadership, if you were called to leadership by God, I would never forget I had a pastor who once told me, God did not give you your leadership gift just for your job. He didn't. Your leadership gift is meant to bless a lot of people in a lot of spaces in your life. How are you using it? And how are you using it intentionally? Don't go get on every committee like you'll hear Miss Michelle Diller share. Cap it to 3 things now. I'm a master at the cat in a hat, where I got a lot of things going at once, and then I get exhausted and overwhelmed. But really center a few things in a few spaces, work being one, and then in other areas of your life where you feel God is calling you to use your leadership giftedness, and then share that gift there. But know that you are called to greatness. God never puts more on you than you can bear. If you were called to it, you will thrive and you will do well, but it won't always be easy. But be intentional with how you are living a fit admin life so that you can pour out healthy, healing, loving energy, as opposed to burning people with your exhaustion and your steam and your frustration and fatigue. So I hope that you get something out of my why, which is just sharing with others how to lead from a healthy space and how to be their best selves and accomplish their goals. My why is to help others be able to be their best self and to know that they are amazing and worthy. And there are 2 things that I want to share before I close out today. One is a quote that I came across several years ago, and it's anonymous. Its author is anonymous, but it says, before anyone ever had an opinion, you had a purpose. Before anyone ever had an opinion, you had a purpose. And what that quote means to me is, God created you before the foundation of this world. He knew the plans that he had for you before this world was ever even created. Therefore, your purpose goes back deep, 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 deep. You and only you can do the things that you were called to do. And it does not matter what other people think of you, whether they praise you or whether they slander your name. Your purpose was created far before any of these people existed and before they ever had an opinion of you. So live your purpose and thrive in your purpose. The second thing I want to share is a poem that I teach to every group of students that I ever work with. It's a poem that I have all of my students and staff say wherever I become a principal. And it is a poem that was taught to me and my students when I was teaching by my elementary school principal, Frank Walker. And he had my students to learn this poem, and it encouraged so many of them. I had a class of students who were struggling readers in middle school, and he came and he spoke to them and gave them motivation, and he challenged them to learn this poem, and they did. And they won a pizza party out of it. And they were so excited. But because of the power of this poem and its message, I always teach it to my students. And we say it after we say the pledge every morning, because I want them to know that they are capable of doing anything they ever put their mind to. And it's the same thing that I want you to know. Anything that you put your mind to, you are capable of doing. Do not let haters or you get in your way. Don't think about what you don't know and what you can't do. If God created you for it and he puts it in your body and in your belly with a fire to do it, just do it. Stop overthinking it. Just get up and go. Make it happen. Because success begins with your will and your state of mind. So with that, I leave you with this poem called A Winner's Creed. And it goes like this. If you think you are beaten, you are. If you think you dare not, you don't. If you'd like to win but think that you can't, it's almost for certain you won't. If you think that you'll lose, you're lost, for out in the world you will find success begins with a person's will. It is all in the state of mind. Life's battles don't always go to the stronger or faster hand, but sooner or later, the person who wins is the one who thinks, I can. Success begins with the person's will and the one who thinks, I can. So make it happen, Fytadmynlyfe. I hope that you are encouraged. And I hope that as we go into 2023, that you will be intentional with living your best leadership life. Do not die to this work. You were not created to die to this work, but you were created to pour life into others and to be able to empower others. So find your why, find your center, find what makes you happy, and be intentional with living from that space and leading from and through that space. Have an amazing, outstanding Fytadmynlyfe Day. And thank you for listening to my why and the journey of Fytadmynlyfe so far. Have a great day.